welcome to this podcast and discussion about electric cooking in Uganda. My name's Stephen Hunt, and I work at the UK FCDO, the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, on energy innovation. And in particular, I lead on the Modern Energy Cooking Services programme, MEX, from the UK. One of the countries where we've had the most, I think, some of the most interest and traction has been in Uganda. And so I'm very excited today to be talking to Lydia and Justine about that experience from Kampala. So I'm just going to start by asking you both to introduce yourself. Thanks so much for being up for this, and then we'll get into the discussion. So if you don't mind, maybe if I could start with Lydia first. If you could just briefly introduce yourself and your role today, how you first became aware of cooking as a development issue, and when you started working on it.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephen, and thank you for giving us this opportunity. So my name is Lydia Nandawula. I work at the British High Commission, FCDO to be specific, and I've been here for a while working in the climate and energy space. So I first became aware of cooking as a development issue in 2011. We were co-funding a project with UNDP. It was a climate program, mainstreaming climate change in district plans. Now that area had been hit by landslides, and so my first interaction on this grant was improved cook stoves. So that was my first idea of clean cooking at the time. So that was now bringing to light what can be done, because the program was also addressing issues of deforestation for cooking, looking for firewood for cooking, for institutions like schools and households.
So Justine, same question to you. Great to hear a little bit about your background, and particularly in the area of cooking.
Yes, my name is Justine Akumu. I work with the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development in the Renewable Energy Department. I have recently transitioned into the Clean Cooking Unit, where I play a role as the Senior Supply and Demand Officer. So my role is really to support supply chains on clean cooking and ensure that we raise the right demand and provide access to these cooking solutions. My first interaction, I must say, it's a bit of a bias, and I have a lot of passion. When I joined the Ministry of Energy, I came in with a background in promoting bioenergy solutions. And at that point, most of the bioenergy was being used for cooking. So we came in naturally to, develop technologies that can help the public transition from the traditional form. The current forms of use of firewood and charcoal involve, heavy emissions of smoke, black carbon, and at that point, a lot of research was being done to show that black carbon and smoke actually have a detrimental impact on our health. In addition, there was also a lot of research coming out showing that, women were spending a lot of time, and children as well, gathering firewood, and it was affecting their productive time that they could have used for, business or for education. And, I naturally got a bias. Now, when I came into that sector, I really wanted to promote modern solutions. At that point, it was looking at modern forms of bioenergy, but it still wasn't really, driving the point home. So gladly, around 2018, 2019, a lot of research came on ecooking, electric cooking, to be precise. And it showed that with these new solutions, you could save time. It was much cheaper.
Can you say a little bit about what you think the big drivers are for action on clean cooking, maybe from the perspective also of women and people in Uganda, and then also from the policy perspective? And I'll let you decide which one you want to go for. But let me go with Justine first this time.
Yes, I guess I'll start with the policy perspective. From the policy perspective, we really want to transition, again, recognizing that the heavy reliance on firewood and charcoal for cooking is a contributor to deforestation, is one of the main causes of climate change in the energy sector. So from that perspective, in a bid to promote, cleaner solutions, clean cooking comes in naturally. And we are now starting to see that clean cooking is not only a climate and energy, solution, it is also an opportunity for employment, as we're seeing a number of private companies coming in on board to invest in the clean cooking sector. Yes, and we're seeing, again, with a lot of awareness creation, women are starting to appreciate, the problem, and also men are starting to, again, observe and realize that, with their role in providing access to resources, financing, and to purchase these appliances, they can actually play a role. And we actually see, with the promotion of clean cooking, we now see more men playing a role in the kitchen and in the decision making on food and, purchasing the cooking appliances.
An everyday woman in the kitchen, looking at a modern woman, is going to be the time spent, cooking. So that's going to be an important driver, because then they can spend their time elsewhere. For a rural woman in the village, it's going to be the cost of alternatives. Yeah, if the alternatives are cheaper, like they can just go and find wood and cut wood elsewhere, then that cost is not reflected in their everyday decisions. And so they can as well use charcoal or wood. So time savings, cost savings are drivers.
What was your experience of first starting to think that electric cooking could really play a big role here? And we'll go to Lydia first.
Sure. So before we even got to electric cooking, first of all, we did not have the electricity to even think cooking. Most people had cookers. I had a cooker that I used like once in a month. So the rhetoric has been electricity is very expensive to cook over, and no one would dare even try. So it was a product or a device of a few. And so what happened then? Even then, we didn't have electricity that was available. Like the luxury of cooking over it was not that, it wasn't there. So with our Get Fit program, starting in 2011, 2013 thereabouts. So our aim was to attract small scale renewables to invest in generation and ensure that at least we had electricity available and reliable. So we're busy on that journey until 2020, where we started to see small scale dams, 1 to 20 megawatts added to the grid. And so at least we had some surplus to even talk about electric cooking. So for us, where we are right now, it is a reality. It is becoming a reality that we can cook over electricity, because at least it's there. We are talking surplus. We are talking how do we direct the excess electricity to cooking. And what has happened now, while we're on Get Fit up until 2020, 2023, MEX was doing a good job of making it even realistic, making it a reality that we can cook over electricity with the efficient and modern cooking devices.
Justine, what's your sort of journey or perspective on electric cooking as an option?
Yes, similarly, we grew up, every time we had a high electricity bill, we would call the utility, umeme, and the first thing they would ask us is, are you cooking with the electric coil? And then when you say, oh, yes, we are, so they would encourage us, stop using the electric coil, turn off the lights, those were part of the energy efficiency measures. And, again, at that point, our electricity supply we were actually having deficits at that point. We were having a lot of blackouts. So government took a deliberate effort to invest in growing the electricity grid, investing in electricity infrastructure to increase, to improve the quality of electricity. Right now, we have very high reliable electricity reliability, but also our installed capacity has since grown to the point that we are now experiencing an apparent surplus. So now that's now creating a bit of a problem. Now that we have a surplus, how can we use this electricity? It took us back to assess, the households, and cooking was the biggest activity at the household level. So, it was obvious, in order to increase electricity demand, let us shift the population cooking, with firewood and charcoal in their households and in institutions, and introduce electricity to them. And that was before we interacted with the Modern Energy Cooking Services program. So as government, looked at that as an initiative, we were looking at, okay, we provide an affordable tariff for cooking, but it now started to, when we started to interact with MECs who introduced to us efficient cooking solutions such as the electric pressure cookers, we actually saw that using an electric pressure cooker consumed less electricity. It cost less to use electricity for cooking than with firewood and charcoal. So it was the perfect timing, because at that point we had a problem, and the MECS program came with a solution.
So you'd kind of sort of started to see the opportunity already because of this surplus, and you were kind of looking for solutions, and then MECS came, so Modern Energy Cooking Services program came along and was helping, I suppose, to research and highlight options like electric pressure cookers, which were going to use less power than the rings.
Yes, and I must say I was one of the biggest doubting Thomases. I think at that point, I told the MECS team, it's impossible. You cannot use electricity for cooking. We've been told as we're growing up, it's so expensive. I have not seen an efficient, electric cooking device before. And what kind of household doesn't use firewood and charcoal? I don't imagine, a future in a cooking, sector in Uganda that doesn't have firewood and charcoal dominating, because we've known that the alternatives are very expensive, they're very costly. And so with this research and evidence that was brought by the MECS program, where we're able to actually do cooking experiments in a laboratory, which seemed too good to be true. Indeed, they are too good to be true. And indeed, we remain doubting Thomases. We say this is a laboratory situation. It can never be ideal. It's too ideal for the household setting. So we went into households. I myself got an electric pressure cooker. What I saw was, it was super fast. I was cooking beans. What I knew I'd cook for 1 hour or more than that was now being cooked in 40 minutes. I was cooking, the food was very tasty, which was, we always believed without firewood and charcoal, it's not tasty. You couldn't even tell the difference. The food was tasty. My hands were clean. It was too good to be true. And most importantly, I did not see any difference in my electricity bill. So once I saw that, I recall my friends in office were joking, were teasing me about it later on, when I'm now the biggest preacher of electric cooking, and, electric, these other appliances, biomass and firewood. We can reduce consumption of biomass and firewood because we now have electricity, and we have efficient electric cooking devices in the country.
Yeah, and I must add even that when they got converted, they converted us as well. Because you have to have an electric pressure cooker. You have to see the benefits, appreciate them, like you've been told, and then you can demonstrate to others. So because cooking is part of our culture, it's traditional. We've been cooking this way over wood for quite some time. So it's going to take some time to change the mindset. But the benefits, I think, will help us to get the transition that we want to see.
What do you see as the, maybe I'll ask this one to Lydia first, what do you see as the kind of remaining barriers? What do you think are the things that are going to slow down the uptake of electric cooking? And what do you think we can do about them?
So availability of the electric pressure cookers. So we've had issues with stocks. We get so excited about the EPC, the next thing you hear, it is not there. So we need to ensure that there are stocks of EPCs. And I think what we can do is to ensure that we localize the supply chains in country, and ensure that they are able to have stocks whenever they're needed. So we're looking at like bulky suppliers who don't run out, who have the capacity to bring in the large stocks, and maybe regionalize these such that every region, northern Uganda, eastern, western, they have where to go, and so we can keep the supply. The other one is still the culture. I talked about this. So culture, we're still, the way we cook, the traditional way of cooking is still with us. We've been cooking like this for the last so many years. A girl growing up to be a woman is prepared, and the way they're prepared, cooking is part of it. It's part of the preparation to become a woman. So if we're going to break into that strong culture with the modern and efficient cooking services, then we're going to have to create awareness. So we're still on the awareness because we're changing behavior. You're changing cooking behaviors, not in a way that is detrimental, but you also want to cut back. For example, an African woman spends like 4 hours cooking, but we're seeing modernity coming in. We're seeing mobile phones coming in. We've seen this modernity. So and 85% of our population, I think, is youth under 35. So they're going to catch up with the modernity. They're not going to want to wait for 4 hours. They can use that time productively elsewhere.
Yeah, really interesting to hear. Really encouraging that the stocks are going off the shelves, that there is that demand happening. Can you say something about maybe how you see, I'll come to Justine in a second, but just about that EPC, you focused on the electric pressure cooker. Are you seeing most interest in that? I also know induction hot plates are another, efficient solution, and maybe in some countries they feel a little bit more like cooking on a charcoal stove. Do you have any feeling for whether EPCs are going to be stronger than induction, or both will be playing a role?
I think EPCs are going to be, there's a stronger justification for having an EPC. I'll tell you why. In terms of the water levels, for example, if you're cooking, you just put enough water for what is needed. Now, when no one wants to cook over an induction stove and then you have to keep pouring water in whatever you're cooking, yes, it might be efficient, and Justine has more experience on that. But I feel like the EPC has a solution that has the solutions that we've been looking for. So in terms of efficiencies, yes, not just the water levels, just putting everything in one pot and closing it off and just relaxing. You don't even have to open like wood over an induction stove. So I still think that adoption of EPCs is going to be much faster than induction stoves.
Yeah, Justine, what's your thoughts on that?
No, for sure, I agree. When you look at the efficiency again and the cost saving, the electric pressure cooker is we're seeing it's again because you're adding pressure into cooking, so it's faster to cook. You're saving more time, you're saving more energy. So what we're seeing is most households actually, especially the primary cooking beans, beef, matoke, is now shifting to the electric pressure cooker. The only shortfall that we have with the electric pressure cooker is it can make, so with the research that we've done with Mix, it shows it can make up to 90% of our meals. Okay. When it comes to making breads like the chapati, which is a common delicacy in again among Indian cuisines. Our cuisine to an extent is influenced by Indian food. So that's the only limitation of the electric pressure cooker, and I think that's the only advantage that I see that the induction cooker has to the electric pressure cooker. So I think if you want to go off, go entirely electric, having a combination of the two would work. But I would, again, as Lydia has said, I would vouch for, promoting the electric pressure cooker, especially to realize the cost savings for households who are very, cost sensitive. But what we're seeing is the electric pressure cooker is, creating the entry point for electric cooking. Then the induction cooking is coming in to supplement.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Really interesting. Really interesting. You mentioned the gender kind of relations point earlier, Justine, about who's doing the cooking, who's buying the their devices. Could you say a little bit more about what you think the dynamics are?
Yeah, what we've seen is actually men have become more aware about the problem. with now that we have electric cooking, it's a device that looks more catchy. I think, it's more modern, it's more trendy, it's smarter. So in comparison to firewood and chuck, when we asked the men, why weren't you excited? I don't want to get into the kitchen with all that smoke and everything. But now that we have the electric pressure cooker, we now have the electric cookers, we now have the men getting more interest. They even want to go into the kitchen and they want to try out foods, to prepare some meals. So with electric cooking, we're seeing men are more involved in it. And also, we've also had pleas from men saying, yes, whereas it's the women that do the cooking, it's us who buy these appliances. So educate us, involve us, be more inclusive to us so that we can appreciate the problem and, help our women to, again, have access to these appliances.
Does the kind of the communications and the awareness work, does it sort of focus on men or focus on women or just kind of even? What's the strategy for this?
I think we're still targeting women because they're the dominant in the kitchen. And our society is very patriarchal. So men will come in, but we're focusing on that woman who has to almost every day. That girl who the expectation it falls on the women. But we've tried to bring in men in our campaigns, and we have also targeted them on their opinions. But it's going to take a while. But we need them. We need them. Those can be champions. I'm glad that in the ministry, one of the ministers, Minister Okasai, is really up for cooking demonstrations and spreading the message about clean cooking.
How important is that, do you think, that leadership from the ministerial level? And, what do you think is enabling that?
I do have to admit, this is something that we really observed from the Tanzanian side. The First Lady, then when she was the Vice President and when she became the President, she took it up and became a champion of clean cooking. Similarly, in Kenya as well, the First Lady took it on, and we saw a lot of, excitement and interest in clean cooking. So we simply borrowed that as well, and our minister is really excited about cooking, and the impact that it can make in terms of increasing. First of all, reducing the demand on firewood and charcoal, but increasing the electricity that needs to be, that government is generating, how we have to ensure that electricity is being used. And, through the minister, she has really been a big front for us. And she has also had a personal, interface with this problem. She actually admitted to us that she lost one of her sisters to, again, a respiratory illness that was related to exposure to firewood and, the smoke from firewood. So this is really a personal thing for her, and she's really passionate about this. And what we've seen is through her passion, she has been able to address the highest offices of the president, State House, and she has also opened up a door for us to speak to the First Lady, who also happens to be the Minister of Education. And the education sector is one of the biggest consumers of firewood, and therefore given us a very good, entry point into that sector. But also, she has also helped us because she's a politician. She has linked us to the offices of Parliament and to the politicians and also to cabinet. So with the political, championing, it really helps raise the profile of clean cooking and, helps to get everybody listening. Our minister also doubles. She's a member of the clergy. She's she's a reverend canon. So with that, she has also linked us to the clergy, and now the clergy is interested. They want to be the anchor and the champion of clean cooking.
What are you kind of hoping from this collaboration and this work in the next year or two?
Yeah, one of the very innovative things we are discussing with the MEX team is to come up with a fund that addresses, helps bridge the gap for access to capital, because there's money in the banks, the private sector needs the money to stock up the electric pressure cookers, but for some reason they're not getting that money. What is it that we need to do to help bridge that gap? Is it the interest rate? Do they have collateral? How can we de-risk that investment to make it easy for the bank to lend out to the private companies so that they can stock up these electric cooking devices? And that's one of the challenges that we are running with the MEX team, just to see how we can address and have the private sector tell us what the problem is and see how we can address it. And I think that's a challenge that we are running together with the MEX team. I think another very interesting thing is whereas the electric cooking at the household level is gaining traction, we now want to see the feasibility and of cooking with electricity at the institutional level. Can we have savings in electricity, and what interventions and incentives should government put in place to ensure that schools switch from firewood and charcoal to electric? And here, because right now we have over 30,000 schools that are heavily relying on firewood and charcoal. So I believe with such a pilot, it can be a very big game changer for the education sector. So I think those are the two very interesting pieces that I'm looking at, hoping they come to fruition and help us to learn and scale up.
Thanks, Justine. Lydia?
Yes, I'm so glad that we are on this journey, which we started, I think, 2023, when we decided to use some of our bilateral programming or bilateral resources to scale up this program in Uganda. So we would like to see the national ecooking strategy implemented. I know that the ministry has done some work on that, and it's addressing issues of demand, supply, the enabling environment. If we can have that implemented, finalized, published, and start to implement all the core areas within it, then we're likely to see a thriving sector, because this is going to guide investment, this is going to guide other policies, this is going to help with mainstreaming across ministries, local governments, and even other donors, like where are the areas to support. Also, as a country, and I think Justine can speak to this, as a country, we've not met the targets that we had set us up for in the clean cooking space. We are very behind on the clean cooking targets in the National Development Plan 3, which is ending in June. And we have another round that starts, it's the NDP4, National Development Plan 4, starting July this year until 2030, which is also the SDG for universal access to energy. We've taken this affirmative action. So we'd like to see action. We'd like to see the transition to clean cooking actually happening and those targets being met.
I saw the High Commissioner involved with quite a big event, the launch event before, and I guess because clean cooking touches on quite a lot of priorities, doesn't it, relating to gender and nature and climate, etc. Are people pleased with how things are going at the moment?
Yes, very much so. So we're still on this journey with our leadership. It's still in our strategy, because part of our strategy is green growth. And we have a campaign goal around promoting clean cooking. So within the strategy, we have clean energy. Within that is clean cooking. So there is still appetite for this. The results speak for themselves. And we're so proud that we are being credited for this. Like, this technology is working. Thank you to the UK for the technology that is working, and which has the potential to change the cooking landscape in Uganda. We also want to see that the clean cooking unit, for example, that we have established with the ministry, is able to run sustainably and run these interventions and ensure that they're attracting investment into the sector. At the global agendas, when we have our ministers, both here in Uganda and UK ministers, that we can further that, the clean cooking agenda at a global level and ensure that there's investment attracted into the sector and the sector is self-sustaining. I'd like to see clean cooking, e-cooking at that level where it's a bigger agenda and the unit is sustaining itself. It will be very pleasing to see that the transition has happened with our support.
Maybe a last word for you, Justine, as well. I mean, are you pleased with how the cooking unit is going and the direction of travel? And are you finding, are other donors also becoming interested? And is that kind of coming together?
Yes, I think one of the things that I really appreciate about the support that we've received, in promotion of electric cooking from the UK government is, again, you've been able to, again, through research, we've been able to translate science to policy. We have, evidence-based, we've generated real evidence in our context as Uganda and shown that this works and, supported us now into translating this into policy. So now we're at the point of scaling. And that's what I really appreciate the most, coming up with solutions that actually work for the people. What we are also seeing is, again, with the support of the Clean Cooking Unit, it's helping to also raise the internal appetite for clean cooking. In the past, I mean, we're coming from a ministry that had a strong leaning towards electrification. And now, after showing the problem that, almost 90% of the country is using firewood and charcoal, and therefore we need to have a deliberate intervention to reduce this demand and shift it to electric. And now we're starting to see the internal appetite, opening up in the ministry, and through the Clean Cooking Unit, it's also going to raise the ambition, give us the right staff and the right, manpower to actually roll out all these interventions. And what we're seeing right now is we've been approached by the French Development Agency, the African Development Bank, all are coming in to design programs with the appreciation of a Clean Cooking Unit being in place to do the overall coordination. So we believe it's going to support us to mobilize more resources that are needed. We need a lot of resources. We need to shift over 90% of the population to modern forms of cooking energy. So we're really grateful for this opportunity, and we will really use it as an anchor to mobilize more resources needed to drive this ambition.
Really appreciate your insights and really appreciate, all your thoughts on this. I think we'll leave it at that. I think that was really, really interesting. I guess from my perspective, I feel, really amazed at the leadership that you've been delivering, and I'm really encouraged, I suppose, about the extent to which we're seeing that traction, the alignment of interests, I think, between the policy level, all the way through the utility and the businesses to the women in the kitchen. I think that's the really kind of encouraging bit about this. I think it also feels, I mean, I've been working for a long time in this area. I always felt with the improved cook stoves, it was a little difficult to talk about that as a modern solution, as a really transformational solution. And I think that's where we are with the electric cooking option. And I'm really encouraged about the uptake and interest. I'm sure there'll be different bumps on the road, but I really like the focus on institutions, for example, as well. And think about the volume of firewood and charcoal going through those, and the scale of that opportunity alongside the households as well. So thank you again. I'm really hoping to come to Uganda in October for the Renewable Energy Conference. So hopefully get a chance to meet you there in person, and hopefully go out and see some of the work there. But thanks so much for taking the time for this, and wishing all the best to Uganda for this transition in the coming period.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.